He has certainly shown a willingness to lie constantly. And also, like, if you read the DMs that he sent to this reporter that DM'd him, which is crazy, and his lawyer must fucking hate him, A. But B, he definitely seems to be just, I think the term is sociopath, right? From what I'm reading, basically, he can have the smallest little thing justify the biggest thing, right? Well, we're not using customer funds. It's like, well, Alameda Research is using customer funds, and then like it's the smallest thing that you have to be so into yourself and like not actually thinking to think that that's actually a legitimate cover sort of thing.
Two Bored Apes talking NFTs, DeFi, and some random stuff. Two Bored Apes talking NFTs, DeFi, and some random stuff.
Welcome to episode 61 of Two Bored Apes. I'm your host, Jamie. I'm here with my friend and co-host, Roy. Roy, how are you? There's a lot to talk about, isn't there?
There is a lot to talk about. This is a very special episode. This is a pivotal point in the direction of this podcast, potentially, because we are foregoing our regular formatting because we have such a strict format. But we're throwing that out the window.
We have two formats, and this one is following neither.
Correct. Yeah, we're not doing Twitter Q&A, which the last two episodes were that, so I think people will be happy to hear that. We're also not doing our usual news of the week, generative art, yada, yada, yada. This is a special episode to talk about FTX and the drama and the fallout and the everything.
Yeah, because ostensibly it would be the news of the week, but it's one of the all-time biggest frauds in history, never mind just in crypto. So it just seems so big that we might as well just kind of talk about it specifically and then kind of riff on the implications and all of that, because it's so big. And the story is pretty fucking juicy as well. And it's still unfolding. So there's a lot to get into. So how do we start this? You want to just kind of give an overview or something? Or what?
Yeah, I mean, I imagine almost, if you listen to this and you don't know what's going on with FTX, you maybe were just in a coma and woke up, and the first thing you did was like, oh, new episode of Two Bored Apes.
Buckle up if you're listening and you don't know anything about it.
Yeah. Do you want to give a quick high-level overview, and then we'll get into all sorts of detail? Sure.
So FTX is an exchange, was an exchange. I guess it still is an exchange, but it's now defunct, basically. And it was run by this guy, Sam. SBF is how he's known in the space. And just recently it blew up. It is only a few years old, and they raised money various times. Most recently, I believe, was this January at a valuation of $32 billion. So this is a company that exploded and seemed to have a huge future, and it just imploded about 2 weeks ago now, a week and a half or something ago. And there's a lot to it. There was a related entity called Alameda, which seems to be the main reason that it blew up. That's where I'll start. And what do you want to
get into why it blew up? And effectively, the short version is there was some concerning news about various things that they were doing, which led to a mass exodus of people trying to withdraw their money, a bank run, so to speak. And then it just became apparent that they paused withdrawals and said, we don't have the money. We can't pay everyone. And then people were like, hey, what the hell? Where are our deposits? We deposited money. What happened to that? And then we started unraveling, and people have been digging down rabbit holes.
So to get a little bit more specific, I think the thing you're referring to started with CZ, the head of Binance, saying he was going to sell their FTT token. So basically, he was an early investor in FTX, and FTX had their own specific token called FTT. And so CZ recently announced that he wanted to sell his FTT position, but he wanted to do it slowly. Why are you laughing? Just because it all sounds ridiculous?
Just the number of acronyms. CZ is selling his FTT tokens, which is FTX, which is SBF's.
I don't disagree. So anyway, he wanted to sell his FTT token, and he said he was going to do it slowly so as not to impact the price in the market. And then Alameda Research, which is basically a hedge fund that is extremely related to FTX, even though ostensibly they should have been a little bit more distant. We're going to get a lot more into that later. basically said that they were willing to buy all of CZ's FTT token at $22. But basically CZ saying that he wanted to sell it spooked the market, and that's what got other people selling, and that's what kind of started the bank run, which I believe ended up being about $6 billion within 72 hours of people withdrawing.
Something like that. And I guess, I mean, we should explain CZ is the founder and CEO of Binance, which is by far the largest crypto exchange in the world.
Yes.
And yeah, so I mean, they're effectively the number one competitor to FTX, or they were. And this kind of made them even more the number one competitor. But yeah, the reason he said that he wanted to sell, or they were planning to sell, or they were actively selling their FTT tokens, was that I think a week or so prior, some news came out that someone looked into like the balance sheets or the books for Alameda Research, which they had been using the FTT as collateral and sort of estimating the value of it as like $2 billion, and the total market cap of FTT was way lower, or like the volume wasn't there to, if they wanted to sell $2 billion worth, they wouldn't even get close. They could maybe sell like $50 million, let alone $2 billion. And so it just seemed like there was some shady stuff happening. And then CZ came out and was like, you know what, we just want to get rid of this token, and we're going to start selling. And then everyone was like, all right, this is kind of scary, there's too much, some stuff doesn't make sense here, let's get out. And then
so do you want to maybe we need to talk more specifically and more in depth about Alameda, because that's such a huge part of this.
How about the origin story?
So SBF graduated from MIT, then
SBF, MIT.
It's another acronym, I forgot. Okay. And then so he started working at some...
Created AR, which then created FTX, which has the FTT token, which CZ.
He started working at some trading firm that I don't remember the name of. Some regular trading firm. And then he left shortly after and started Alameda Research. And as I understand it, the way that they were initially succeeding was, I don't know if you remember this, I definitely remember this, but for a long time, there was a huge discrepancy between Bitcoin, probably a couple other big coins too, but mainly I remember Bitcoin, the prices on the US exchanges versus the prices on the Japanese and Korean exchanges, like hundreds and hundreds of dollars difference per Bitcoin.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't just those two countries. I was in Australia in 2017 when all of this was happening, and there were massive discrepancies there. I literally had the thought at one point, and I mean, I put a little more than zero thought into it, where I was like, maybe I should try and figure out how to arbitrage. Yeah,
there was a big opportunity for people that had, multiple country access to exchanges and also a good amount of capital. So as I understand it, they were doing a ton of that and making a lot of money. But then as time went on, they started trying to make money other ways that were less delta neutral, so to speak. And they had directional bets on the market and stuff like that, which is obviously a lot different and more dangerous. Now, the other thing I've sort of read is that it seems likely that FTX's creation in general was basically just a way to get more funding for Alameda, because they were having trouble raising money for Alameda Research in and of itself. I don't know whether or not that's true, but that is certainly something that I've read.
Yeah, there's a lot of, now people are doubting how true anything that he's ever said. People are just doubting whether there's any truth to any of it. But,
he has certainly shown a willingness to lie constantly. And also, like, if you read the DMs that he sent to this reporter that DM'd him, which is crazy, and his lawyer must fucking hate him, A. But B, he definitely seems to be just, I think the term is sociopath, right? And, he's willing to, from what I'm reading, basically, he can have the smallest little thing justify the biggest thing, right? Where basically he's going, well, we're not using customer funds. It's like, well, Alameda Research is using customer funds, and then sent like it's the
Yeah.
smallest thing that you have to be so into yourself and like not actually thinking to think that that's
Mm,
actually a legitimate cover sort of thing.
yeah. So Alameda Research started in, I think it was 2017 or
Sounds about right.
thereabouts. And, the origin is a little hazy, and there's uncertainty on exactly how profitable they were with this arbitrage stuff and how much money they made. But eventually it seemed like they were doing a decent job of making money one way or another. And again, who knows how accurate it was? Maybe they just pretended to make
Yeah.
money and then raised money from others by like cooking their books and stuff like that. But at a certain point, Sam started FTX, which is a crypto exchange, and it. I think that this tagline was the platform for
For
traders
trade.
by traders,
Yep.
which there's actually one of the other previous massive financial frauds in history has the exact same
I saw
tagline,
that.
which was funny. But anyway, they for any crypto exchange, one of the biggest issues you have to begin with is providing liquidity for tokens. So let's say you're trying to you're selling, say, Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, pick 10 other coins. If someone wants to come and buy and sell, it's difficult for there to someone has to start off the buying and selling. If someone goes, I want to buy, someone has to be like, I want to sell. And it's very difficult to immediately have buyers and sellers that agree on like the same kind of price. So what every exchange does is they get a third party company or firm in to basically act as a market maker, where they will inject a bunch of liquidity on both sides for buys and sells. And that way, when someone comes in and like a user signs up and say, I want to buy some, and then there's a bunch of prices, and they can immediately get liquidity and start trading. And what FTX did was used Alameda was the market maker for
Right.
FTX, which is very like shady, dodgy, and raises a lot of eyebrows and questions. But and a lot of people like had raised this as a concern over the years, but for whatever reason, people just were like,
Yeah,
"Yeah, this seems sketch," but
that's sort of a little bit the other funny thing, funny not funny because of how it turned out, but like
mm,
they had all of the advantages to where they were
yeah,
basically cheating in a huge sense of the word, right? In
yeah,
terms of having an informational advantage on all of their customers and still could not profitably trade.
yeah,
Um, yeah, I guess there's going to be a lot of, we'll probably step back and go in order and then, but also riff on stuff. One of the other things that, you keep reading and seeing, and there's the famous interview with Caroline where this comes up. They did not seem to be at all into any sort of reasonable bankroll management.
mm,
There's also that SPF had that thread where he's basically talking about how the Kelly criterion is like a bad idea.
mm,
Um, so they kept seemingly wanting to have more leverage and bigger sizing, more leverage, bigger sizing, which works great when it works great, but works terrible when it works terrible.
yeah,
Um, so what ended up sort of seemingly happening in the aggregate, the big thing was that Alameda would lose money, and then FTX would plug that hole by sending customer funds, which they're absolutely positively not supposed to be doing, obviously, to Alameda to plug the hole. Because Alameda was, like you were sort of talking about earlier, they were taking out loans and using things like FTT as collateral and other coins that they created, where again, they would have a very small float. So that on paper, the position would be, say, $200 million. But realistically, if they were to sell all of it, they would be able to only get $2 million or something for that position. So they had these seemingly big positions that they would take out loans on. And then when things went bad, they couldn't actually sell those to pay back the loan. So they would steal/borrow the customer funds from
mm,
FTX. And that seems to be the main source of where the money pit came from.
yeah.
Um,
I'm
and the
still,
main fraud. And they also, I'm sorry, had basically a backdoor in the system, so that way these transfers would be obfuscated from
mm,
whoever the geniuses were who were doing the auditing for this.
yeah.
and so they couldn't actually see it. Supposedly, again, supposedly, right? We don't know how
Allegedly,
deep the fraud
allegedly.
goes and all
Yeah.
that stuff. I'm sorry, I'm just going to keep going a little bit.
Yeah.
They had no board of directors, they had no CFO, and the corporate structure was so complicated that there was 134 different entities under the FTX banner.
Worldwide. Yeah. I'm gonna add to that that last piece. The new CEO who came in, I forget his name, Ray someone. Basically, he made a sort of announcement today, or publicly released some documents in as part of like the bankruptcy filings, the Chapter 11 filings, and I'm going to quote. He says, "I have over 40 years of legal and restructuring experience. I have been the chief restructuring officer or chief executive officer in several of the largest corporate failures in history. I have supervised situations involving allegations of criminal activity and malfeasance, i.e. Enron. I have supervised situations involving novel financial structures, i.e. Enron and residential capital, and cross-border asset recovery and maximization, Nortel and overseas shipholding. Nearly every situation in which I have been involved has been characterized by defects of some sort in internal controls, regulatory compliance, human resources, and systems integrity." He then goes on to say, "Never in my career have I seen such a complete failure of corporate controls and such a complete absence of trustworthy financial information as occurred here. From compromised systems integrity and faulty regulatory oversight abroad to the concentration of control in the hands of a very small group of inexperienced, unsophisticated, and potentially compromised individuals, this situation is unprecedented." This is coming from someone who oversaw the Enron case.
Yeah,
Unprecedented.
Enron is what I feel is the go-to example of financial fraud in the United States, at least when people talk about it. I feel like that's the go-to. And this is the guy that was in charge of that bankruptcy / restructuring, saying that he's never seen anything like this. So that's crazy.
It's so crazy. What was I going to say? Yeah, it still blows my mind how Alameda lost money, because so not only did they have all of the customers' trade information, they could front run trades if they so decided to. I saw something today that came out about how Alameda trades were immune from being liquidated on FTX, and it's just baffling. So I'm sure you saw this as well, but Dan Friedberg, who was the chief compliance officer or something for FTX, he was like one of the main people at Ultimate Bet Poker back in the day, which the massive cheating scandal came out where they were effectively just looking at people's hole cards, cheating, and just winning bunches of money. And then, it unraveled because they were really stupid and obvious in the way that they were cheating. They could have gotten away with that for a very long time. But you got to imagine they were still, I just don't know how they,
It seems like, again, there's still so much more to come out, some stuff that will never come out. The biggest thing seemingly to me is, there's a lot, but they did not have any sort of realistic level of discipline, right? They were not, we've sort of seen this kind of thing in poker, right? Where somebody can start with a bankroll of, say, $2,000, right? And quickly run it up to $1 million, but they are not satisfied with that amount of money. And so they want to keep expanding how much money they have at that same rate. And so they just keep risking too much money all the time. And even if you're making essentially good bets when you do that, it only takes a little bit of bad luck for things to go very badly when you're sizing things too big. It seems like largely there was a lot of that. Now, it also seems like, there was an echo chamber, a lot of drug use were told was happening. There's also like webcam footage and stuff where you can see drugs on the table and stuff. There was that one drug where supposedly the side effect has to do with like excessive levels of problem gambling, which is sort of terrifying and so annoying for the people that actually lost tons of money on this. Now, me personally, I've never used FTX, luckily. I'm sort of old school enough in the crypto game where I really do believe the concept of not your keys, not your coins. So my money only ever really touches exchanges for a half a second when I send money to it, sell it, and then withdraw it to my bank account.
Mm.
That's basically the extent of my time on centralized exchanges. I don't know. I don't know if you had anything there. It is kind of crazy where, you know, I've seen a lot of people on Twitter who essentially are smart enough and sophisticated enough theoretically, right, in crypto to not have got burnt by this, but developed enough trust in this one because of how big it was
Mm.
and because of how successful it seemed like it was, that they got caught with their pants down and had a bunch of money stuck on it that
Yeah.
now is going to be marked down to nothing or whatever.
Yeah. It's a lot of these sort of really advanced traders that were moving large, like trading large sums of money, would use FTX because
It's
the
because
actual,
it's for traders by traders, right?
I mean, the actual software and the platform and the like all the options and stuff were, from all accounts. Again, I haven't used it, but and I don't really trade coins, but they were really great and they had a lot of good features and it was well built. But you know, that's all for nothing if the centralized entity perpetrates fraud and steals your money, and you know,
Yeah.
it's yeah. So yeah, it's really
Yeah, the Ultimate
it's
Bet
crazy.
software was pretty good too.
Yeah. I never loved it,
It
but it
was
wasn't
very
bad.
different, but
Yeah,
I didn't think it was bad.
yeah. It's I've heard a lot of people talk about how kind of ironic it is that a lot of the NFT community, which are like very new to crypto, generally speaking, 2021 and 2022, largely all of our assets are self-custody because we use MetaMask and because you know you
Right.
can't use a centralized exchange to buy and sell NFTs, really. And the vast majority of the people that got burned were people that had been around for many, many, many years.
Supposedly sophisticated people from crypto Twitter, right? And who have so enjoyed disparaging NFTs this whole time. Yeah, that is
Mm,
kind of funny.
yeah, yeah. And like this whole story is continuing to unravel. Like every single day, there's new. So Sam went on Twitter and just like tweeted the word, like he's going to tweet a Twitter thread as if like he won, and then tweet something, and then two. And the first tweet, one, is just what? And this was like 3 days ago, like a
Yeah.
week after this all came out, and people were like, what the hell is happening? And then the next tweet was literally the letter
P,
H.
I believe.
No, H, because he's spelling out what happened.
Okay.
H and then A and then P and then P. And it's just infuriating. And people are like, what is happening? Yeah.
Well,
what is happening? Yeah.
but then it turned out seemingly, so there's basically services that check whether or not you're deleting
right.
tweets, right?
Yeah.
But so the way that they work is basically they'll check how many tweets you have, and if the number is the same over the course of a minute, it does not detect that you have deleted a tweet. So supposedly what he was doing was he knew that somehow that was how these operated. He would delete a tweet that was sort of incriminating and then post this one tweet within a minute, so that way these services that are tracking whether or not tweets get deleted would not capture it, and then was slowly basically deleting various incriminating tweets through the method of making these inane tweets at the same time.
Yeah. And I mean, many people had backed up all his tweets well before, and so you know it didn't work. Everyone knows what he was tweeting, and now it's very obvious that
The
he
other
was
thing
trying to.
too is, sorry, that you know he's trying to destroy this evidence or whatever, but then is also freely DMing journalists
Yes.
the most incriminating shit possible. Like, it's so crazy.
Yeah. It's really crazy, and he's not. Yeah, he's.
So we also haven't gotten into like all of the lobbying he was doing, the political donations, who his parents are, like who Caroline's parents are. There's a lot of stuff going on there too that's sort of interesting and frustrating.
Yeah.
I've delved into that stuff less, but to some extent have followed it as well.
Yeah, same. I've never been one to really believe in conspiracy theories, and I generally think when someone like says something that seems kind of outlandish and like hard to believe, and like, oh, that would never. I'm like, yeah, I kind of agree. And you know, 9/11 was perpetrated by the government. You know, we didn't actually land on the moon, and you know, it's all the government's doing. This is the first instance that I can realistically be like, there's something very strange afoot, and you see it.
Sorry.
Yeah. No, I was going to say you see it because of the amount of lobbying he was doing and how much money he donated to the Democratic Party, who his parents are, who are lawyers and very involved in politics. Caroline's dad, I believe, was Gary Gensler's boss, and they both went to MIT. They were both working at MIT. Gary Gensler is the head of the SEC and very involved in this space. And then you combine that with some of the news articles coming out from like the New York Times that are basically fluff pieces on Sam, where they don't mention anything about fraud or stealing money or anything, and it's just really, oh, this is a wonder kid who made a bad decision and is kind of collapsing. Poor him. At least he's sleeping at night. And it's just like all of it combined is like this is whack.
Yeah, that's the New York Times thing is a little bit sort of extra interesting in that recently I believe it was revealed that they had made a conscious editorial decision 4 years ago or something to only write critically about tech. Basically, they basically decided that all these big tech companies were like too big for their britches and potentially dangerous or whatever. So we need to scrutinize them, which I feel like is largely true, but also if you are deciding ahead of time that you're only going to write negative stuff, that's sort of ridiculous too. But the idea of scrutinizing them because they're very powerful and potentially malicious is quite reasonable to me. But then, ostensibly, right, crypto is also technology. And then they're writing this thing that is not at all critical, basically, of a giant fraudster committing a giant fraud. So there's that. You said the thing about him. I believe he was the second biggest donator to the Democrats during this election cycle. One of the other guys at Alameda was like the third biggest to the Republicans. I don't know if you saw that. It might be the guy who was the CEO that quit like 3 weeks ago, and when none of us thought that was weird, and then in retrospect it was weird. I can't actually remember who it was, but another $33 million or whatever to the Republicans. But so it does seem like SBF was quickly on his way to sort of cement FTX's position through regulatory capture. Now, we'll see how much of that is able to still come to fruition and how much the people that are sort of in charge of that kind of decision making will go, oh, this guy was a giant fraudster. Probably the stuff that we were getting advised from him is not such a great idea. It is. Yeah. I mean, like, did you see Kevin O'Leary? Like, my mind is kind of going. Did. Well, which one did you see? The one where a couple weeks ago he said he would never, that's the safest place or whatever?
I saw both. So there's a video of Kevin O'Leary a while back who he was talking on some panel about exchanges and specifically FTX. And then he goes, I have to disclose I am a paid spokesperson and an investor in FTX. But, I believe this is the safest place because this kid, Sam, he's a genius. He's got two parents who are compliance officers. And, if there's one place I feel safe having my money, it's at FTX with him. And then obviously this all blows up. And then, there's an interview or video comes out just a couple of days ago. Someone's like, all right, so all this has happened. Would you bet on Sam again? Would you invest in him again? And I didn't see the whole thing, but effectively Kevin O'Leary starts off with saying yes.
Yeah, ridiculous.
Yeah.
So that also reminds me, did you see the Sequoia Capital thing?
No, I don't think so. What happened there?
So Sequoia Capital are big. It's just a big investing group, right? I think they specifically do VC, but don't necessarily quote me on that. And they had invested in FTX a while ago. And when they did it, they wrote like this letter, and it was just glowing praise. The guy specifically said he felt like he was looking at a future trillionaire, and talked a lot about his eccentricities or whatever. And it's one of those things that seems ridiculous at the time, but seems so much more hilariously ridiculous in retrospect. Part of it was about how like he's just like playing League of Legends, and because they're like old and out of touch, they're like, well, this guy's a fucking genius. And that's another thing that people have been getting a big kick out of, right? Is that he's in like level 3 bronze in League of Legends and has been for years, which is pathetic to basically
Yeah.
never level up. Beyond the fact that he should be playing Dota, not League of Legends, right? And he's not
Uh-huh.
even doing well in League of Legends.
Yeah. It's that there's also I mean, there's this whole other side to him where he's been very public about being an effective altruist,
Right.
which is basically means that, you know, altruism is, you know, donating money, using your money to help others, being charitable. Being an effective altruist is a concept that, well, if you have $100, you can donate that $100 right now to charity. You can give it to someone less fortunate than you, and really make an impact on someone or many people's lives. However, if you have like the skills, the talent, the connections, the ability to sort of invest that $100, you know, turn it into 1,000, a million, 10 million, $1 billion, you know, and these numbers can obviously be whatever, but if you can, you know, make money very quickly and then you can donate, it is more effective in terms of helping the world to raise more money, make more money, and then donate even more. And he's spoken about how he's going to donate billions to charity and to
Yeah.
here and there. And
He definitely got a
uh,
lot of like
yeah,
fun, positive coverage when he was talking about that a while ago as well.
mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's in terms of effective altruism as a concept. Is it also basically covering the idea that, you know, when you actually do go to donate, right, you can use basically math and science or whatever to decide where the money actually has more use, right? It's not just about delaying it. It's about analytically deciding where you're going to get the most
I
bang
think
for your
so.
buck, I think.
Yeah, which in theory, all of this makes
It
sense.
totally
Like,
makes
these are
sense.
good
I actually
points.
do. I have thought about that concept, right? Makes a ton of sense because you sort of think of the, um, you know, the gains or whatever that you're making by not what am I compound interest, right? Basically,
Mm,
by delaying it. Now, I also wonder how much compound interest is there on the donating now, right? Um,
yeah.
it's very obvious how the compound interest of the money works of delaying it, but like if you know, donate these mosquito nets now that save lives now, what are the compound interests of good in the
Hmm.
world that come from that can sort of act as a counter argument to just waiting
Yeah.
until you're about to die to actually donate all this money.
Yeah.
That's a whole other
It's
can of worms though.
yeah. Yeah, man. What a and this has all happened basically. It all unraveled extraordinarily quickly.
Very
Basically over the
fast,
course of
yeah.
a few days. And the fallout's been going for a week longer. And I think a lot of people are talking about contagion and how we have
So
not yet
BlockFi,
seen.
right,
Yeah.
already blew up because of this, as far as we
Hmm.
know. They had got like a $400 million loan, I believe, from FTX or from Alameda. What's the fucking difference? I don't know. Um, in June or something of this year, I believe, and that sort
Mm.
of staved them off for a while. But now it seems like they're dead again as a
Yeah,
result of
I mean,
this.
specifically, they were a victim of the UST, the Terra, and the Luna collapse that happened earlier in the year, and they were effectively going to be insolvent, and customers were going to lose out money. And uh, FTX, Sam, basically came in and like bailed them out, bought them, and said, you
Yeah.
know, we're going to inject a large amount of capital, keep you afloat. And it again seemed like this, you know, really savior of the market and got a lot of positive press because of that. But then we just are finding out now that he was pressuring them to like keep their funds on FTX.
Yeah.
And
I
yeah.
also saw that theoretically was doing this preferentially to people that had big FTT balances because he didn't want forced
Mm,
selling of the FTT token. But yeah, when he was
mm,
buying this is also sort of where he started getting the nickname the JP Morgan of crypto, because JP Morgan,
mm,
I guess, was sort of being a lender of last resort, and that's how he acquired a lot of his banking assets or something like that. And so this was
yeah.
seemingly being him being similar in the crypto space.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk
Uh,
about just sort of what you think this will do to the legitimacy of crypto, what you think it'll do to people understanding the difference between CeFi and DeFi, any of that sort of stuff, or do you want to try and
yeah,
get?
I'd love to talk about like the short, medium, and long term uh, after effects of aftermath of all of this. And I think it's quite clear that short term is devastating to a lot of people, to the space. It's lost a lot of credibility. Medium term is probably still likely to be bad from regulatory perspectives. Sam was the face of crypto. He was, the in Washington, all the politicians and many people would have seen Sam, known of him, known of other people meeting with him. His face was on TV. They did Super Bowl ads. They had sports stadiums that they branded. They partnered with so many people, Kevin O'Leary and many, many, many more. And then for this to all come blowing up, it's sort of like a lot of people sort of in government and regulators, but also just like, just your average person in, say, the US, I think that's where they were probably most well known, but just around the world as well, would probably look at this and go, oh, that crypto thing blew up again. It was a fraud. That whole crypto thing was a Ponzi. Oh, I knew it. I knew it. I knew crypto was bad. So people are just going to be like much more likely to stay away. And there's going to be a lot of fallout and potential massive regulatory like overreach. I think some sort of regulations are good and needed and wanted, but the big fear is that there's over-regulation, and this might lead to more of that. Long term, though, I think it just kind of highlights the importance of DeFi. Like this is a fault of a centralized team, a centralized entity, a centralized exchange, as have been most of the things.
Right? Opaque financials.
Exactly.
Is
No transparency. You look at all of the DeFi protocols, Aave, MakerDAO, many, many more, and Uniswap. They're all just running as you'd expect because it's all code and yeah. I think long term it's fine, and people are going to realize, oh yeah, we shouldn't keep trusting these centralized exchanges. Let's just do things on chain where this literally cannot happen. And it's not 100% like on chain things are immune. There can be bugs in code, and there's people that can exploit them.
Up, for sure.
But it's not a person intentionally necessarily deceiving you and hiding things. You can't hide things.
Right. Yeah. So the other thing is, like, theoretically, when you're talking about DeFi, the worry is that there's a bug in the code, right? But we can all look at the code and judge for ourselves, which is not something that people had the luxury of being able to do with FTX and seeing that the money wasn't there and that there was all these related party transactions and yada, yada, yada.
Yeah.
How funny are the videos of him just shaking uncontrollably because of all
in hindsight, so much stuff is so obvious, but yeah. What do you think of the short, medium, and long term effects? You kind of agree with mine, or?
Yeah, I kind of agree with you. I think in terms of specifically, if you want to talk about the short terms, it does seem like we might see more dangerous contagion that has not surfaced yet, right? Of just various funds that have been a little bit suspiciously quiet in the aftermath.
NFT projects too, whose treasuries might have been on FTX.
Yeah, that's true as well. Zach just revealed one of them, right? Soul Chicks or something like that. That's also another whole other thing, right? Solana. We haven't talked about this, but Sam and FTX were a big part of Solana, and specifically, it appears that Sol BTC and Sol F, which are basically wrapped versions of those on Solana, were created by Alameda, and the actual Bitcoin and F that were supposed to be backing these is non-existent. And so that means all of those coins on the Solana network, those wrapped versions of Bitcoin and Ethereum on Solana, are worthless themselves, which blew up a bunch of DeFi over there. Solana went down like 40% in a day the other day because of all this.
Yeah.
So that's another version, sort of version of the contagion we're talking about.
Yeah.
Just in terms of a whole chain there.
Yeah. It's been just a dark week. It's just been bad.
Yeah. Another thing that, I was actually just talking to Kayla about this morning. She was sort of surprised to hear how high the price of Ethereum was, relatively speaking, because she was like, I thought everything was just dying because of this. And it's like, it does seem like, we talked about this with Art Blocks a while ago, but like, there's not many sellers left of Ethereum, right?
Yeah.
Like after Terra Luna, right? After Three Arrows Capital, after this, it's like, there's been, in all of crypto history, like Mt. Gox is sort of the only thing comparable, I think.
Yeah.
and the Dow hack, right? Those are basically the 5
Yeah.
worst things in crypto history. 3 of them happened this year in
In
sort
like
of
6 months.
yeah, right, in sort of rapid succession this year. Um, there's just almost not much worse stuff that you can see happen. So
Yeah.
I don't know. It does seem like now again, this seems like it's going to scare away all of the potential new money, right? Where the fuck are the buyers going to be at this point
Mm.
when there's this much scariness and uncertainty and let's be clear, right? Outright fraud
Mm.
that has sort of been in the space. Now, a lot of people obviously want to draw a line between crypto and this, right? Because it's not the DeFi, it's not all of
Mm.
the very pure ethos of crypto, which is true, but you can't just fully separate it, at least in the minds of the potential buyers or whatever that you want to join
Yeah.
the space. So it does seem like where is the money going to come from? I don't know. But also on the other hand, the forced sellers have already sold, right? Or most of them have, and all the potential losers of faith sellers, they've already lost faith and sold. Like there's not much left on the downside, seemingly.
Mm. Yeah. I totally agree. It's on the one hand, it's if you haven't sold yet, you're probably not going to panic sell.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you've had plenty of
but
chances to panic sell.
yeah,
So if you haven't done it
but new
yet, there's a good
buyers
chance you won't.
is probably not something we're going to get a flood of.
Yeah,
Maybe, but you never
Ecuador
know.
announced that they're going to be buying 1 Bitcoin a day starting tomorrow, right? But
Okay,
that's small for
well,
an entire
it's
country, right?
something. Yeah, uh, yeah. I mean, the other thing is, after the merge, ETH has been like almost deflationary and sometimes
Yep.
deflationary and pretty much not inflationary, which like that is, imagine if the merge didn't happen, there would be so much additional selling pressure on
Yeah.
ETH.
Here's
Ostensibly.
another thing I've heard people talk about that's sort of a little interesting to think about. When we see what happened with Three Arrows Capital, and when we see what's happened with FTX here, like how much of the bull market and the buying was just insane leverage, right?
Yeah.
And was not necessarily new real capital coming into the space, but just leveraging that same capital over and over to increase buying pressure.
Yeah.
Sort of an interesting, sad, whatever thing to think about.
Yeah.
It is also funny, like you sort of see people talking a little bit of the opposite, like what if a guy like Michael Saylor had been more disciplined and waited till now to be buying? But the counter I think is that without all of sort of that insane bullishness before, would we have ever gotten to those prices? No, which means we wouldn't have cratered to here to have this opportunity. That's just sort of speculative alternate history curiosity.
Yeah. I've heard from a few people that we're here through the entire last bull market, and by and large things were far, far more destitute last time around than they are now. And we're still relatively early into this bear market. It could go on for another, if we say like how long the last one went on and the one before that, they were like 2 to 3 years. This could go on for another 12 months, 18 months. But
or it could be longer than previous ones, right?
Could be longer. Could absolutely
there's
be
no
longer.
reason that it has to be no longer than the previous biggest crypto bear. That's ridiculous.
It could be way longer. But they said that sentiment was just like way lower because there was just nothing happening. Like a lot of people left. There wasn't DeFi. There weren't NFTs. People were just kind of twiddling their thumbs, and a bunch of people were building stuff, but there wasn't this whole community that we have now. Like there was a smaller community, but it was much, much smaller. And so it's kind of, to me, a really great bullish sign that there's still so many people and so much like activity and so much stuff being built and things happening, and like experiments are being run, and brands and companies are still like dipping their toes in. Nike just announced dot swoosh.
Right.
There's like 10 massive companies that are coming onto Polygon. Starbucks, Reddit, Nike, more. I can't remember them all off the top of my head, but yeah, it all seems kind of bullish to me. Game of Thrones is doing a thing with NFTs, and yeah,
Well, speaking of which,
yeah.
House of the Dragons, have you started yet? You said you watched one
Yeah,
episode a while ago, right?
I'm about halfway through. I watched I think four or
Okay.
five,
So
and
they did the
yeah,
big time jump.
I don't think they've done a big time jump. They've done like a few
Couple
like
2 years
small
or
to
whatever.
medium
Okay.
ones, yeah, but I don't think there's been a massive one, which I'm looking forward to. But yeah,
Love that show.
yeah, it is really good, but I'm just still so burned from the last season of Game of Thrones.
Oh yeah. I'm over that.
Yeah,
Do you want to I mean we can talk about this again, the specific story some more. We can extrapolate some more, or we can kind of work on wrapping this up. Do you have anything specific you
I'm
want to get
happy to
into?
kind of wrap it up. I think FTX has been it's obviously the story of the week,
For sure.
and
And it will
but
continue
most
to
of
be.
us, it will continue to be. Most of us have spoken about, thought about, heard about, and been exposed to a lot of FTX news. And I mean, we could go on for like hours. We could really dig in more, but I think we've done a pretty good job highlighting
Yeah.
the big pieces and giving some opinions. So let's maybe. You mentioned you had a cool way of wrapping up the show, a new thing you wanted to do at
Well,
the end.
unfortunately, I thought you were going to interpret that the way you did, where it's like a fun thing or whatever. But you know how we're always trying to say like to do good things. I
Right.
thought of another good one that
Oh, you
we
thought
can
of another
add.
good
Yeah,
one?
not
All right.
necessarily a fun thing for
That's
us to
less
do.
fun.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
it is going to be good because it's like why aren't people doing this, right? It's going to be a good thing. Um,
Okay.
just as an aside, I quite liked the new Art Blocks curated drop. I kind of wish I got to participate in it. Interesting art to me.
Yeah, I haven't had a chance to. I'm so. It used to be every single like I would like that was like the one thing every
I
week
know.
I'd like look forward to, and then yesterday I just saw this thing pop up on OpenSea and it was like top. And I was like, oh right, there was an upload. It's a Wednesday. Obviously there was a curated job. It's been a while, and I haven't had a chance to look into it, but at a cursory glance, it looks pretty cool. And
That's just
yeah,
a little
maybe
aside.
let's talk about art blocks for a little bit. Art blocks is
You want
it was
to?
just yeah.
Okay.
I mean, Martha just happened. Neither of us went,
Yeah.
but apparently there were like 600 people there, which is kind of a large number given how far and difficult it is to get to.
Yeah.
It seemed like it was
In the middle of
awesome. Tim
nowhere.
Ferriss was there. That's kind of cool. I like his podcast and books. Uh, yeah, Art blocks is popping off. They went on this crazy bull run. Like maybe it ended like a week before the FTX stuff blew up.
Yeah.
But prices across the board were going kind of bonkers again. And specifically, I think people were really putting together sets. So season 1 to 8, a bunch of people put together full curated sets, and then a lot of people just started buying a bunch of curated stuff from those seasons, and especially season 1, like crypto blots. I think the floor got to like 1.2 or 1.5 ETH at one point, which is historically been one of the lowest floor collections because it's high supply, but it's season 1, so yeah.
Yeah. High supply and also probably not as sort of complex or interesting of art as a lot of the other ones, right? But yeah, very high supply as well. It is funny how just the entire crypto space is imploding, and then kind of art blocks buyers are just sort of vibing with the art, right? They just kind of don't care.
Yeah. It's
and that's sort of a little bit like you were saying about NFTs in general being it's sort of separate in a lot of ways because the crypto stuff is a lot of it's so theoretical, right? But as far as use cases and stuff like that, like the pure art NFTs, it's already the thing that so much of crypto wants to find, right? Is use cases that are far off into the future, but that the art is already there; it's already happening. And art blocks is sort of the center.
That is everything.
That.
Yeah, it's been going great. FX Hash has been doing really great. There was a new collection that dropped. I can never pronounce it. Let me try. Asequia, maybe.
Don't know about it.
By the Paper Crane and Rich Pool. It just, I think within like a few days or a week, it's like the 10th most traded, like high volume
I've seen
collection
this on
FX
Twitter
Hash.
a bit. Looks a little bit like Bent.
a little bit. Also looks a little bit like, I forget the second
DK?
most recent GM DAO drop, not DK.
Oh, Factura maybe.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
does look a little bit like some of DK Motion's like
yeah.
scenes where he's got his characters
Mm.
walking through a little bit to me at least.
Oh, I love DK so much. He's so good. But yeah, FX Hash has been chugging along, doing pretty good things. Generative art is.
I listened to our
generative art is
episode of
great.
Waiting to Be Signed. I thought it was really good.
Oh, yeah, everyone should go check that out.
It was sort of the funny thing. We've talked about this a little bit before, talking about like listening to our own podcast, but like hearing me talk, I'm like, this guy's making some great fucking points. Like that's exactly what I think, and that's exactly how I would phrase that. And it's like, yeah, no shit, Jamie, that's you.
Yeah.
So stupid.
Yeah. But we're pretty smart though, right?
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Some people like it.
We think we are. Yeah.
All right, let's wrap it up.
Wrap it up. You want to play a game?
Sure. You want to do a giveaway or just play the game for fun?
Let's just play for fun.
Okay.
We've done a few giveaways. Let's play for fun. Ooh, I got a good one.
Okay.
Okay.
By the way, for the listeners that don't know, the name of the game we're playing is What Am I Thinking? And we're not going to tell you the rules because we don't have that kind of time, but you'll figure it out. Ready? 3, 2, 1. Tank.
Lollipop.
Tank and lollipop.
Wow.
Tank and lollipop. Those are pretty far apart.
That's really what the...
How do you combine those two?
Sure.
Okay,
I got something. I guess
3, 2, 1. Soldier.
Person.
Soldier in person.
Wow.
Soldier in person. Okay.
Okay. I got something.
Okay. 3,
Kinda.
2, 1. Teenager.
Army.
Teenager and army.
Okay, I got another one.
3, 2, 1. Recruitment.
Military.
Recruitment and military. Okay, I got one.
Boy, army would be great. Okay, sure.
3, 2, 1. Draft.
War.
Draft and war. Oh, we're doing that circling the drain thing. And war. Okay, I guess.
Now, soldier would be really good, but
you ready?
draft? No, not yet. Sure.
We're not going to match. I can tell by that. 3, 2, 1. Conscription.
Gun.
Conscription and gun. Boy, we might. This is one of those ones where we might have to give up because now, like the correct answer.
No, we're not giving up.
Conscription and gun. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. 3, 2, 1. Supplies.
Death.
Supplies and death. Supplies and death.
Okay.
3, 2, 1. Casualties.
Grass.
Grass and casualties. Okay.
Okay.
3, 2, 1. Fertilizer.
Grave.
Fertilizer and grave.
Okay.
3, 2, 1. Corpses.
Cemetery.
Corpses in cemetery. Can we quit
Okay.
because we're so fucking...
Let's go with 3 more.
3 more. 3. Okay. Corpses in cemetery. Okay. 3, 2, 1. Casket.
Zombies.
Casket and zombie. Three, 2, 1. Gravestone.
Funeral.
Gravestone and funeral. Okay.
Oh boy.
I got my last one.
Sure.
3, 2, 1. Eulogy.
Eulogy.
Oh! We did it! That was amazing!
I changed last second as
Wow.
well.
Oh, that was
Oh.
exhilarating.
That was great.
Oh, man, I did not see
Gravestone.
that coming.
What was I gonna say? What was it? It was gravestone and cemetery.
Yeah, I think so.
Funeral. Gravestone and funeral.
Gravestone and-
I was gonna say dead.
Oh, okay.
Or no, I was gonna say deceased. And then right at the end,
Funeral
that
is
was-
a little bit more. Okay, that's been the end of the episode. Don't do huge financial fraud, right? That's a good one to tell our
that's
listeners.
a good one. Donate blood, don't litter, likes, comment,
Yeah,
subscribe, follow us.
The thing that I had thought about was wear your seatbelts, right? No reason not
That's a
to
good
put
thing
on
to
your
do.
fucking seatbelt, people. Just do it, right? It's way safer. It's not inconvenient. Just do it
I agree.
every time you get in your car, put your seatbelt on.
I agree 100% with this, but I am a little disappointed that this was the thing that we built up to. I was hoping for a little more.
Yeah, well, I mean, again, I told you that you interpret it as being a bigger thing than it was meant to be.
But even when earlier you said you had something like, the donate blood type thing, I was still hoping for a little more than...
There's no downside to it, though. It's an easy, pure one. That people,
Okay.
I think.
Okay.
Um.
Well, thanks for listening.
Yep. And sorry if you got screwed by FTX.
Oh yeah.
I hope you didn't.
Yeah, I hope you didn't.